Good evening and welcome to Seminar on Sexual Violence, week number 2 lecturecast with Professor Jen. If I keep looking down at my notes, it's only because I have some things I wanted to prepare for you this evening and I'd like to stay on target. As you can imagine, we're in week number 2 chat. At this point, if there's anything that you need to put in chat, I need you to do that in week number 2 as we've now moved from week number 1. For those of you who are relying on captioning services, I'm still told it takes 4 to 5 days. In the event that lecturecast 1 has not been captioned, as I've discussed in chat, you're going to need to call your advisor, as I've done all the paperwork, and there's just nothing else I can seem to do. Questions of the week, again, just to review as we're here, will be sent to me in week number 11 Dropbox, about a half a page each. If you've been with me before, you know how that goes. If you haven't, half a page each question. And it'll be all compiled because it's instead of a final exam for week number 11. At this point, all of our questions regarding the material should be discussed in chat. So in week 3, it'll be week 3 chat. Week 4, it'll be week 4 chat. So tonight we're going to have some interesting dialogue, and I'm going to give you some insights and some examples of things that I've seen out there as sex as a weapon, especially as it relates to seminar on sexual violence. The material this evening is going to be difficult, so if you're not in the mood for this and you're having a great day and you'd like to keep it that way, then either pause or get rid of me now and log on later. We're going to touch upon some very adult subject matter this evening, so I appreciate you staying with me on this. I wanted to summarize for you a couple of things that I think are very important with regard to sex as a weapon. I had seen a film which my technical advisor is going to look up the name of the film for us, and I will spell it out for you in the event that you'd like to see it. And it has to do with weapons such as sexual violence used against women. So you might say, well, Professor Jen, what does this have to do with the material? It has everything to do with the material. The reason I say this to you is this particular film, which I'll spell out for you in a moment, talks about what happened in Bosnia from 1992 until 1995. Now, in 1992, I happened to have given birth to one of my children, and I was 29 years old. Many of you in 1992 were just either born, being born, or not even thought up yet. And this went on until 1995. And the purpose of using sex as a weapon and as a war crime in Bosnia was for several purposes. One, to extract women from their cultural context and to shame them and humiliate them. Number two, to provide some bizarre methodology of ethnic cleansing, which is a terrible thing. And three, traumatize entire neighborhoods that had to live in fear, men included, that the women that they loved in their lives, whether it was their mother, their grandmother, grandmothers can still conceive, sometimes up until 50, 55 years old, their daughters, their sisters could be taken by the army and held in something called rape camps. So this might be a good time for you to get a pen and paper as I will wait. For the purpose of our chat this week, I would like you to look up anything about the Bosnian rape camps. I looked it up myself as a follow-up to the film that I'm about to tell you and spell out for you. And there is roughly 213,000 articles on the internet. What I would like you to do is find an article for this week, week 2, in chat 2, and link an article that has to do with what has really gone on historically in Bosnia. I'm ready now to spell out the name of the film and to share with you a little bit about the film. G is in girl, R is in Richard, B is in boy, A is in again, V is in Victor, I is in Iris, C is in cat, A is in again. The Land of My Dreams, 2006. The film talks about somebody who you could probably relate to in many ways. She's somebody's mother, as well as the fact that at the time of her capture and put into a rape camp happened to have been a doctoral student. So she was very much like you, a student, and very much like me, a mother. And what had happened was she was captured, and without providing a spoiler here, obviously put in rape camps. And the film takes us to today. It's not a documentary, but it's a very, very good historical piece that really provides a fictional content, but it certainly describes what women did suffer. And the film is all about what happens now that she's a mother conceived in a rape camp and the effect that this has on her teenage daughter. Certainly, Bosnia is not the only place where people find sex as a weapon. Often, in persons' houses, which I saw in case management, it's unfortunate but true. Many times when somebody's being sexually exploited, someone in the family always knows, other than the perpetrator and the victim. Someone else usually knows and continues to keep the secret. Because why? The whole family is getting paid off by the secret. Whether the bills are getting paid or there's another relationship, such as, let's say, a mother and her boyfriend that she feels sustainable, providing that the boyfriend can call the shots and have sex with whomever else he wishes in the home. What happens is a repercussion very often, time after time, which you may wish to look this up, but you don't have to. What happens is that the person who is the victim of sexual violence, which it usually becomes obvious in the teenage years, especially for women, find themselves outcasted and separated from the herd in their own family. As years go down the road, after the victim grows up and becomes an adult, very often they become estranged from their families, not by choice, but because they told or they didn't play along. Very often, there's something called reblaming of the victim, meaning that when the victim has some time behind him or her, because remember, this is equal opportunity and it can certainly happen to a man or a woman, very often family members just want to move on and they don't ever want to discuss it again. They won't apologize, they won't acknowledge, and in fact, very often the victim finds him or herself re-victimized by family members and sometimes even outcasted because they're a reminder that nobody did anything. It's very cruel how sex really becomes a weapon. That's another example. Looking at my notes. I've had issues and experiences in my life where I've had prostitutes call me. And they've said to me, Jen, I was sexually assaulted and raped and I don't know what to do. And very often, the women, predominantly women who are prostituting, would say to me, I'd like to go to a clinic, I'd like to be checked, but I don't want to call the police. And I'd say, why? And they'd say to me, because there's a warrant for my arrest. Needless to say, it makes sense. Why would somebody who has a warrant for their arrest call 911 and then ultimately become arrested? Therefore, their victimization continues in a very strange way. So what's the best a caseworker can do for somebody in my situation? Take them for what? Appropriate health care, antibiotics, anaphylaxis, etc., to counteract any kind of STDs that they may have contracted through the sexual assault. Very often, vulnerable populations are not only raped once by particular parties, but they're raped by multiple parties at several occasions throughout their life. Unfortunately, The developmentally disabled suffer this greatly. Persons who are vulnerable and cannot speak for themselves. An uncomfortable thought, which you may want to look up, but you don't have to, is that there is sexual abuse and sexual violence against men and women in nursing homes. That could be your grandmother or your grandfather, who are re-victimized over and over again. And there are such noted cases nationally of especially women with Alzheimer's who are not taken very seriously. Because why? Alzheimer's is a neurological condition where people what? Forget the facts or don't remember them at all. Talk about the perfect victim. I want to talk also about sex as a weapon for persons, especially, who know that they have an STD that's transmittable and certainly lethal, such as in hepatitis and HIV and AIDS. In New York State, it's become a felony if you know that you have an STD and you knowingly engage in sexual relations and never disclose that to your partner. That happens quite frequently. I know of cases in my own casework where I've heard of, and I'll just give you an example. A boyfriend and a girlfriend are together. The boyfriend and the girlfriend break up. The person who usually did the breaking up goes about his or her merry way because they're happy that they're really in a relationship. The person who's left who feels scorned sometimes does not react well. I've seen cases where in your population very often, maybe it's called a booty call or whatever, somebody will contract chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, know that they've contracted it, and make one of these 2 o'clock in the morning phone calls to the person who dumped them and offer them sex, knowing that they have this newly contracted disease, and as a weapon have sexual relations and hand that disease back. That is also sexual violence and sex as a weapon. I want to tell you about a case that I knew of at another college. I'm not going to name the college. True story. There was a fellow who went to an all-night party, one of these raves, and a girl in particular at this party had a thing for this guy, and she wound up slipping him a roofie in his drink. Of course, he woke up the next day. He was very disoriented. He was more than just hungover, and he wasn't sure if he had sexual relations or not. And I speak candidly, so let's not be embarrassed. Whereas women can usually tell to some degree if they've had sexual relations, men always can't. And that has to do with anatomy and physiology. He wasn't sure, went about his merry way. Lo and behold, he got a phone call a few months later that he was going to be a father in roughly 6 months. That is sexual abuse. That is rape of a male by another female. So when people often say, well, how is it possible that a woman can perpetrate sexual violence against a male, I provide them with these examples. I'll provide you with another. If a man and a woman, or even two men, take your pick, engage in sexual activity, and the party says that there's something that they don't wish to engage in, if the other party forces that person to engage, whether it's through drugs and alcohol, whether it's through non-consensual sexual activity, and you continue to push that person into having some type of sexual encounter with you, where women might use foreign objects, and I don't mean foreign in the sense that they're made geographically rather someplace else. I mean they're put someplace else. And the man says no, it still means no. If a woman says no, it means no. Another aspect of sexual violence that I would like to share with you, in my opinion, is when Homosexual, gay, lesbian couples are involved in relationships. And perhaps one of the persons threatens to out the other person against their wishes. Perhaps the other person's culture and community is unaware that they're gay, lesbian, or homosexual. Maybe their family is unaware. Maybe they haven't come to terms with how they wish to tell people in their life this very private choice. And so sometimes I've even seen in relationships where parties will look to break up with one another, and then there's a threat made called, if you leave me, I will out you. That is also sex as a weapon. To take that trust and to really broadcast it to the entire world. Not nice. I'll provide you with another example of seminar on sexual violence in actual cases. If one were to take a picture of someone, I'm not suggesting you do this, because if I find out you did, I'll be very disappointed. If one were to take a picture of somebody's face, superimpose it with a nude body that isn't theirs, post it in a public forum, that is sexual violence. It diminishes, it takes away from the person's self-esteem. It might seem funny, it might seem hazing, it might seem lighthearted. It was only a joke. It's not a joke. That is sexual violence also, where we take somebody's face, superimpose it with somebody else's body, and even suggest that that's them. It's basically the extent in social media of taking somebody out in the middle of the parking lot and taking their clothes off. That too is sex as a weapon, and it's not nice. In fact, some of the laws haven't even caught up with some of these types of activities as I provide this lecturecast for you. Let's summarize. I would like you, for this week's Chapter 3 lecturecast, in chat, to please link for me an article about the Bosnian war crimes and sex crimes from the period of 1992 to 1995. And I would like you to introduce the article, meaning I would like you to provide your commentary on the circumstances of the article. Number 2, I would like you to go to 3 persons of your choosing, any 3 persons, for this particular week, and produce it for us in the chat. And I would like you to ask them with a very straight face, whether they're male, female, heterosexual, homosexual, gay, lesbian, transgender, how it is that men can be raped by other women. And even see the reaction. I want you to use your straight face like I am now, where you're not leading the inquisition, the interview, just a straight face. Say, I'm taking a class on seminar on sexual violence. I'm asking 3 random people of my choosing to give me an example in their mind experience of how a man can be sexually assaulted by another woman. I would like you to see the reaction. Do the people laugh? Do they say, oh, come on? Do they say, oh, that could never happen, that's not possible? And I'd like you to make note and report back in chat this week, chat number 3. Oh, pardon me, number 2. I don't know why I said 3. I would like you to report back your findings. Again, I'll repeat it. Go to 3 people of your choosing, and with a very straight face, your interviewing face, your observation face, ask how it is that a man can be sexually assaulted by a woman and or raped. And I would like you to report back their expression, what it is that they said, and if it's possible that they come up with anything, but don't leave the answer. And I would like to see that in chat as well. On Thursday night of this week, I will be loading up some new assignments, which will always be reported in chat, until we get to our formal assignments, which are coming up very soon in the syllabus, which can go in the Dropbox. As always, You can always reach me through chat here if you have any questions about any assignment, and certainly phone hours. Easy to get me on the phone, much easier than even email. So I'm going to leave you tonight with these thoughts. I'll summarize. Seminar on Sexual Violence, Bosnian war crimes, sex crimes, prostitutes that don't report sex crimes because they're afraid of what will happen to them legally if they have warrants, how it is that the vulnerable, like the elderly and the developmentally disabled, especially those with Alzheimer's, are re-victimized and victimized over and over again sexually. The discussion of when men are tricked by women, perhaps with a rofi, etc., taking advantage of a man and wind up making him into a father, which is a lifelong commitment that he might not be prepared to be and doesn't wish to be. That's sexual violence. I'll also include in that statement when women knowingly lie that they have birth control, even though we all know that men and women should be using condoms for the purpose of sexual activity if they're not in a monogamous relationship. But very often, what? Women will say that they're on all kinds of birth control when we know that they're not. Yes, birth control does fail at times. Most of the time it doesn't. But when a man is faced with the situation and a sexual liaison, thinking because you have told him that you have protection and you don't, that's sexual violence that you perpetrated on a man. Of course, I'll leave you with the thought of knowing that you have an STD, especially AIDS or HIV, which is now a felony in New York State, to have sex with somebody knowingly that you have it and not tell them. That is sexual violence. So again, I leave you with the 2 assignments for this week. Check in again Thursday night in chat. You're all doing a great job. There's only a few of you I haven't heard from. And of course, that's entirely up to you, as I explained how we do the rating for the grades. So it's your choice if you don't care to participate in chat. And it's a pleasure to be in your virtual lives through this virtual world. And I wish you a good night and be well always.